you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today or anything you want to chat about. It's easy, visiting gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation, or message me on our socials at GBNews. But first, it's time for the news headlines again with Sophia.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon from the GB Newsroom at 2:02. Your top story. A massive search for Jay Slater is underway in Tenerife today, almost 2 weeks after the British teenager went missing. Spanish police called for specialist volunteers to take part in a new large-scale search as it enters its 13th day. It's after a friend of the missing teenager says he saw the 19-year-old slipping on rocks during a video call on the day he vanished. In other news, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage insists footage showing racist comments made by a Reform UK campaigner was a set-up. Andrew Parker was seen making a series of offensive remarks about Rishi Sunak. He's now apologised but insists he was goaded into making them. Rishi Sunak condemned the racial slurs made against him and said it was part of a broader pattern of behaviour.
He was acting from the very start. This is a total and utter set-up.
Labour leader Keir Starmer will pledge to introduce a new Armed Forces Commissioner and lead a government of service if Labour were to win the election. It comes as Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey says Labour is now the natural party of defence. Mr Healey said his party will do better by soldiers and their families. Meanwhile, the Labour leader praised the army personnel but refused to commit to a 2.5% defence spend.
We do want to get to 2.5%, and it's really important that that's consistent with fiscal rules. The first thing we'll do is carry out a strategic review of resources, of capability, to make sure that the money we are spending is spent effectively on the things that we need. But today is Armed Forces Day, so it is the opportunity to say thank you to all of those who are serving and have served, and to remember the contribution that they have made to our country.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister will hail the duty, dedication and selfless personal sacrifice of servicemen and women as he marks Armed Forces Day. Rishi Sunak will claim his is the only party to meet the Help for Heroes Veterans Pledge. The pledge requires parties to commit to keeping the Office for Veterans Affairs, commissioning an independent review of the medical discharge process and ensuring veterans get the benefits and compensations they deserve. Security Minister Tom Tugendhat told GB News Armed Forces Day is more than just one day a year.
Armed Forces Day, for those of us who are veterans, isn't just one day a year. We live with our service, good and bad, throughout the year. And for some of us, that can bring back painful memories, but it can also bring back huge moments of pride of having served alongside some of the best that our country has to offer. Look at the record. Look at what Johnny Mercer has achieved as the Minister for Veterans Affairs, and look at what the Prime Minister has achieved in creating that cabinet position for Veterans Affairs. We've got Op Resolution, Op Courage, that help veterans who may be finding life just a little bit difficult.
And a new portrait of His Majesty the King in military uniform has been released to mark Armed Forces Day. In his new portrait, the King is wearing his Field Marshal No. 1 ceremonial frock coat with medals, sword and decorations. It comes as Queen Camilla gave a rare national statement praising servicemen and women in a message filmed in Clarence House's morning room.
In times of war and in times of peace, whether seen or unseen, our armed forces support and strengthen our nation. You're a source of inspiration, reassurance and pride, and I salute you all.
In other news, a woman has been arrested after a video was shared on social media of a prison officer and an inmate having sex. The Metropolitan Police started an investigation after it was made aware of footage reportedly filmed at Wandsworth Jail in South London. The woman's being held on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The prison service says it doesn't tolerate staff corruption. A man has died and 7 are ill after taking a potentially contaminated sleeping pill. Cleveland police said the man was thought to have taken medication from a possibly compromised batch of Zopiclone. It said 7 other people who are believed to have taken the pills have been taken to North Tees General Hospital in Stockton-on-Tees on Friday. Police are urging anyone with information to contact them. And in the US, President Joe Biden says he intends to win the election amid calls for him to step down following his performance in the debate. He spoke at a rally in North Carolina where Democrats are hoping to win the state back from Republicans this November. He claimed America itself is at stake and accused former US President Donald Trump of repeatedly lying and said he has the morals of an alley cat. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Right, let's get straight into today's story, shall we? Now, the story of the day and getting so many of you very angry. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has insisted footage showing racist comments made by a campaigner was a set-up. Andrew Parker was seen making a series of offensive remarks about Rishi Sunak. He's now apologised but insisted he was goaded into making them. Here's what the Reform leader has to say about the event, though.
Someone told us he was an actor. We rang him this morning, the Daily Telegraph rang him this morning. He denied point blank that he was an actor. It turns out he is an actor. I found his website. He's a well-spoken actor who does something called rough speaking. Well, I was in the office when he arrived last Saturday, and he was doing rough speaking. It was an act right from the very start.
So you've met him?
I was working, and he came in and came up to me and said hello, and then he went out canvassing where the undercover filming took place. And he was rough speaking. He wasn't being himself from day one. I have to tell you, this whole thing is a complete and total setup.
Rishi Sunak condemned the racial slurs made against him and said it was part of a broader pattern of behaviour. This story has got you very, very angry. So angry that I can't even read some of your comments out because there's some rude words and it's a Saturday lunchtime. But joining me now is a broadcaster and journalist Mike Parry and the former editor of the Labour, thank you Mike, and former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards. You can do a thumbs up as well if you wanted.
I'll save my thumbs up till after polling day.
Right, OK. Oh, my Lord. Fighting talk straight away.
Certainly is.
Now, I mean, this story has got the viewers and the listeners really, really agitated.
Yeah.
They are convinced that there is something more to this story than meets the eye. Channel 4 have said their investigation was completely above board. They'd never met this man. But people are really, really angry about this one. So I'm going to come to you first on this one, Mike. What do you make of the whole story and what's happened so far?
Well, what happens is if you run a campaign for a general election, you need a very good organisational body behind you, because this isn't the first time that Nigel Farage has been tripped up or found himself in, a difficult position in this campaign. Only last week we had the situation regarding another TV issue when two Reform candidates, were accused of putting out possible racist posts and they had to be dispatched. Now, this guy we're talking about, Andrew Parker, he was just a worker, so it's not a question of, he's got to be banned. He's just been told you're not welcome.
Just a volunteer canvassing.
Exactly. And from what I've read, it's a very detailed story. From what I've read, he says that, no, he wanted to support reform. He went in, and the first time the TV people never approached him. The first time he found out that he was subject to this was, he was as surprised as anybody else. But he was never asked by anybody. This is the point he's making. He's saying, nobody ever asked me to go and join reform in Clacton. I have not been put up to this. I was doing it genuinely. Now, Nigel's got a huge problem, Nigel Farage, about getting his message over. So if I just show you this is from a daily newspaper this morning, OK? Now, this is let us rebuild, reform. So his three policies are stand up to Starmer, freeze immigration, scrap tax on income. That message is not going anywhere, right? This is his agenda. It's not going anywhere because every day he's now finding himself having to explain why people associated to reform are coming out with stuff which is found to be very unpleasant, very questionable. And I have to say, Nigel's an intelligent man, he's a straight speaker, and he attracts people who are looking for some alternative sort of vote. Unfortunately, in my view, the people he attracts are not particularly savoury in some cases.
That's your opinion, a very strong opinion. Lots of very strong opinions on this one. Peter, what do you make of this? I mean, you know, lots of people are convinced that Channel 4 are, you know, involved in some way. You know, everyone is denying that that is the case, quite rightly so. But what we're talking about, Mike's got a point, is all we're talking about, and not just with Reform, but with Labour and the Conservatives, is the issues around it. We're not actually talking about the policies, which are surely the things we should be concentrating on.
Well, I think racism is a big issue, and the racism that we've heard this week from Reform activists is unacceptable. But I want to particularly tackle this point about Channel 4. There is no evidence at all produced by any supporters of Reform or by Nigel Farage that Channel 4 behaved in anything other than a proper way. And it's serious to the point of, I mean, madness suggests that Channel 4, a broadcaster of around 40 years standing, would directly interfere in the result of a general election seat by doing a pretence or a fabrication on one of the most high-profile politicians in the country. It's beyond the realms of fantasy, and one can all have a view on Channel 4's output. I generally think it's pretty good. But the idea that they would lie and cheat and connive to trip up a candidate in this way is peculiar beyond belief, and Reform have offered no evidence that it was a fabrication or this gent was an actor.
You're absolutely, he's an actor, he's a part-time actor, OK? I mean, lots of people are part-time actors because actors don't work a lot of the time. Do you see what I mean? So a lot of people doing that. But I agree with you on the Channel 4 thing. A very established media outfit, OK? Jon Snow for years was the front man for Channel 4, so we all know where their politics lie.
A credible person.
A very credible person, but at least he gave us an indication of which way the politics of the station lay. But again, this guy says, nobody ever came to me and asked me to get involved in Reform. This guy wasn't a candidate. The most he'd done was go and deliver leaflets for the lot. So, as a journalist myself for 50 years, I can't believe that somebody would have actually set this up in order to try and discredit somebody who's running for Parliament, particularly the leader of a party. I just don't get it. George Galloway is running his own party and his own campaign, but George hasn't come across these sort of things, as George doesn't attract people who are desperate to find a particular sphere of politics they can go to. The problem with Nigel is he's misunderstood by many people. Most of his policies are quite straightforward, quite acceptable, but unfortunately there are elements of society who see him as a flag waver and a flag bearer for an extreme position which I don't believe Nigel possesses.
I think on the subject of George Galloway, I think, you know, to play devil's advocate here, I think there are some people that align themselves to him and what he comes out with who have said offensive things.
But they haven't hit the headlines like Nigel Farage has.
Is that the point, Peter? They haven't hit the headlines like Nigel Farage, who was on Question Time last night as well, with some would say a hostile audience. Nigel, this is a volunteer. Nigel doesn't vet all the volunteers who work for him. No party does. So is there maybe more people out to get, to use that phrase, Nigel Farage and the Reform Party than the other parties, including even George Galloway?
No, and use that phrase, out to get Nigel. There is no evidence for that at all, because that would imply something that is a conspiracy to undermine Reform, whereas the only reason I want to undermine or attack Reform is through the ballot box and the media and the debate. And the Times newspaper, which is not a hotbed of radical socialism, the Times newspaper points out today that Reform keeps attracting some of these people on their campaign trail and says don't vote Reform because of concerns about Farage, because of divisive language, and because some of the activists behave in an improper and racist manner.
But we have had divisive language used by members of the Labour Party, members of the Conservative Party, people aligned with George Galloway. It's not just a Reform issue, is it?
It's much, much, much worse with Reform. And I've lived in East London for many years, and George Galloway was an incredibly divisive figure. And again, one can be for or against his views on the Middle East, but he is someone who brings division and rancour rather than unity or even solutions.
Nigel, I think, is sometimes too brave for his own good. I mean, he literally speaks his mind, and that's what people like about him, and people want to be associated with him. They see him as a leader. But frankly, there are other issues here. The Putin issue, I don't think it's done Nigel Farage any good. So many people will disagree with the explanations he gave for the NATO-Ukraine situation, OK? And so it's all building up so negatively for him. And also, when he was asked to speak out about, you know, the latest scandal involving this guy, what's his name, Andrew Parker, and these horrendous comments about the Prime Minister and the insults land against him, I'm not sure that Nigel came out strongly enough to condemn what had been said.
In Nigel's defence, because he's not here to defend himself, he did act swiftly and condemn the comments and describe them as vile, which they indeed are. So, unlike some other parties, he did act
OK, I accept
decisively.
that. I accept that.
Right, OK, thank you very much. It's a very, very opinion-dividing debate. Lots of very, very strong opinions on this. So let us know what you're thinking. It's important that we cover all bases here. You've heard what Peter and you've heard what Mike have to say, so get in touch and let us know what you think as well. Now, responding to Mr Farage's claims, a spokesperson for Channel 4 said, "We strongly stand by our rigorous and duly impartial journalism, which speaks for itself. We met Mr Parker for the first time at Reform UK's headquarters, where he was a Reform Party canvasser. We did not pay the Reform UK canvasser or anyone else in this report. Mr Parker was not known to Channel 4 News and was filmed covertly via the undercover operation." OK, so we have to move on for that one. Thank you very much indeed for your comments on that one. OK, and we do have to, unfortunately, read the candidates for the Clacton constituency again. They are Jovan Osua Nepal, Labour Party, Giles Watling, Conservative Party, Matthew Bensalem, Liberal Democrats, Nigel Farage, Reform UK, Natasha Obson, Green Party, Craig Jameson, Climate Party, Tony Mack, Independent Party, Papadancio, Tassos Papadancio, Heritage Party, and Andrew Pemberton, UKIP. Sure, right, OK. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story and a very heated debate, please do go to our website, gbnews.com. Now, we are moving on. Sir Keir Starmer has pledged that his Change the Labour Party will be a government of service for those who serve, confirming that Labour will always ensure that those who defend our country have their voices heard at the highest level, with Labour's new Armed Forces Commissioner. Here's what Starmer had to say earlier on Labour's commitment to defence spending.
We do want to get to 2.5%, and it's really important that that's consistent with fiscal rules. The first thing we'll do is carry out a strategic review of resources, of capability, to make sure that the money we are spending is spent effectively on the things that we need. But today is Armed Forces Day, so it is the opportunity to say thank you to all of those who are serving and have served, and to remember the contribution that they have made to our country. Joining me now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, thank you for joining us. Olivia, what do we make of what Sir Keir Starmer has said today about defence on National Armed Forces Day?
Well, defence has become the sort of front line of this election campaign, if you like. Over the next few days, we're expecting both the leader of the Labour Party and the leader of the Conservatives to focus the campaign on defence. Now, Keir Starmer is obviously very, very keen to show that his Labour Party, in this respect and so many others, is different from the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn wanted to see the Trident nuclear deterrent scrapped, and actually so did quite a lot of shadow ministers at the time. Keir Starmer is trying to show that he is very, very serious about not just Trident, but about defence in general. He's promising at some point to raise spending for defence, and he's promising to help veterans in any way that he can. He's got a bit of legitimacy here. There are 14 candidates standing for the Labour Party in this general elections who are former veterans. On the other hand, though, when it comes to actual promises for actual cash, Rishi Sunak has the upper hand. He has promised that he would raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. Now, even that, some say, is the bare minimum. Former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said that it had to be raised to 3%, and there were rumours that he stood down because Rishi Sunak refused to make that commitment. But 2.5% even is not a commitment that Keir Starmer is willing to make. He says that it is the Labour Party's aim that he would get there eventually, but he hasn't put a date on it and he hasn't committed to it in solid terms. Will that matter in the days ahead, or will Keir Starmer's sort of cosy coffee morning with veterans say it all? Will that persuade voters that Labour this time round is serious about defence?
Indeed, and obviously Angela Rayner did actually vote against renewing Trident in the past, but is saying she's committed to it now. Meanwhile, so I hate to ask this question, Olivia, what's Sir Ed Davey up to today?
Ed Davey is around and about. He's been talking this morning about Nigel Farage and the controversy over the Reform candidate who used that racist slur against the Prime Minister. As before, the leader of the Liberal Democrats is very keen not to concentrate too much on what other parties have to say. It's all about what the Liberal Democrats are doing. So really trying to deflect questions about Farage. Let's have a listen.
Liberal Democrats share no values with Mr Farage. He can sort himself out. My job as Liberal Democrat leader is to tell you what we're about. I want to fight a positive campaign about how we rescue our NHS and make sure we get the investment in health and care, make sure we sort out the cost of living problems that people are really suffering under, and deal with things like the environmental issues like sewage. You know, and I think people get fed up in this campaign when there's all these diversions and nastiness. They want to know what you're going to do for them, and that's what Liberal Democrats are going to say.
The Liberal Democrats have focused their campaign, as you can see there, almost solely around the issue of the NHS and social care. It is unlikely that the Labour Party have to go into coalition with the Liberal Democrats, so it's unlikely that any of the Lib Dem policies on the manifesto will actually get into the statute book. But it is possible that the Labour Party will be triggered by the Liberal Democrats to actually sort out that social care issue. And that, of course, would be a very good thing for everyone.
Olivia Utley bringing us up to speed there on defence and what the Lib Dems are up to today. Thank you very much, Olivia. Now, it's time for, if you want to escape and have a great summer, it's time for the Great British Giveaway, and it's a big one. The chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. It's our biggest prize today, and here's how you could win it.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Oh, good luck indeed. It's a cracking holiday you could have there, isn't it? Well, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Saturday, and there's lots more coming up on today's show. It's Armed Forces Day, and we'll be seeing how one community is celebrating the wonderful servicemen and women who serve our country. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Wiltshire police have arrested 2 people after they sprayed orange paint on Stonehenge.
Well, Just Stop Oil have shared a video saying it's to get the incoming government to sign up to a legally binding treaty to phase out fossil fuels by 2030. Of course, Stonehenge famously associated with oil, gas. I think the 5,000-year-old Neolithic Britons were prolific users of the internal combustion engine, and they drilled for lots of oil, so it makes perfect sense, of course.
Yes, we're going to be joined by Jill Taylor, a spokesperson from Just Stop Oil. Jill, thank you very much indeed. What on earth is this all about? This is just criminal activity under the guise of some kind of activism.
No, that's not, that paint will be washed off really easily. So it's not long-lasting damage at all, unlike the damage that is being done now by the fossil fuel industry, and just keeping burning fossil fuels, putting more CO2 into the atmosphere, You're right. The Neolithic people were not prolific users of fossil fuels. They did not cause the kind of damage that we're causing now. That's all been within since the Industrial Revolution in the 150 years.
So because
this is
it's
when
washable,
the damage has been
so
done.
because this stuff can be washed off, ergo there's no issue here. Well, Stonehenge aren't particularly happy about this. They've come out on their social media page and they say Stonehenge is protected by the Ancient Monuments Act and it is a criminal offence to damage the stones. There are also multiple rare lichen species growing on the stones that are also protected. So this isn't good for nature, is it?
I think you're getting things so out of perspective here. What isn't good for nature is the damage we're doing now, and what's not good for nature globally is not good for you, it's not good for me, and it's not good for the people watching this programme.
The People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to GB News. Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, today is Armed Forces Day, a day which aims to encourage the public to show their support for the Armed Forces family of servicemen, women, veterans, cadets and their families for the contribution they make to the life of the nation. Joining me now is GB News reporter Ray Addison to bring us up to date on what's happening today. Ray, thank you once again. Lovely talking to you today. So many wonderful stories. What's happening now?
Well, we've had around 400 people here today at this event in East Grinstead. It's just a local event organised by local people, but it's really involving everyone from the Scouts to the Sea Cadets, the Army Cadets and military personnel past and present as well. They had a memorial service this morning and then there's been displays by the cadets that I mentioned. We've got military vehicles, which you might be able to see in just a moment behind me. We've got other vessels as well and also, you know, food and entertainment. We've got a brass band, very traditional English brass band here as well, performing some military classics. But I'm joined now by retired RAF squadron leader Graham Stagg, who's been one of the organisers over the years since he moved to the areas. Why do you feel it's so important to keep the memory of the work that the military do for us alive?
It's absolutely vital, not just for the veterans, not just for the regular members of the armed forces, but also the youth. So all three are covered by those tenets, if you like. And so a future Army, Navy and Air Force relies on the boys coming from high school and girls likewise, because it's a very multi-gender society we're living in. And so these days the girls can do practically any job the boys can do.
And probably better as well. Now, I know from your military service you started in 1963 in New Zealand in their Royal Air Force, and then you came over to the United Kingdom, joined the RAF here via Vietnam.
Via Vietnam, yes. I served 3 years and I was based in Singapore, but we used to do detachments to Vietnam. And just during the Vietnam War, of course, in the late 60s. And it was pretty exciting times, I can tell you. So we were supplying both civilian and military units from New Zealand operating in Vietnam.
So you're a veteran, obviously, yourself. You're now playing a key role in trying to encourage the public to support our military community, past and present. Do you think the message is filtering through to them that the public has their back?
That's a good question. I sometimes worry that sometimes the modern generations don't always pick up on the vital importance of a good, strong armed forces, and that's a shame. But then again, there are still some very good people out there who are joining the military and doing a very good job. But of course, these days, the British military is a much smaller organisation. The Royal Air Force is smaller than the London Metropolitan Police Force, for example. When I left in 1991, there was over 100,000 people. Now less than 30,000. So, yeah.
RAF Squadron Leader Graham Stagg retired. Thank you very much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we did enjoy talking to you. As you can see here, a very bustling community, 400 people coming down here, young and old, and really finding out more about how they can support military personnel past and present.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ray. That's Ray Addison on Armed Forces Day there, which is some lovely heartwarming stories, especially coming so soon after the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Saturday, and there's lots more coming up on today's show. But first, it's time for the news headlines with Sophia.
Dawn, thank you. It's 2:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Between 30 and 40 volunteers have now been deployed in the mountainous parts of Tenerife to look for British tourist Jay Slater. The 19-year-old's been missing since last Monday. The search, now into its 13th day, covers a huge area of rugged hills and steep cliffs. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer will pledge to introduce a new Armed Forces Commissioner and lead a government of service if Labour is elected. It comes as Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey says Labour is now the natural party of defence. Mr Healey said his party will do better by soldiers and their families. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister will hail the duty, dedication and selfless personal sacrifice of servicemen and women as he marks Armed Forces Day. Rishi Sunak will claim his is the only party to meet the Help for Heroes Veterans Pledge. And police have arrested a woman after a video emerged online, apparently showing a prison officer having sex with an inmate. The footage was reportedly filmed at Wandsworth Jail in South London. The woman's being held on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Sophia Wensler. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now, there's plenty more coming up on today's show. But before I tell you what we've got lined up, Nana Acquia has joined me in the studio. Nana, with no doubt a cracking show, as always, coming up.
We have a great guest coming up in my political spotlight. We'll be speaking to Brandon Lewis about the disaster that is, of course, the Tory party, how they've found themselves in such a place with so many things that appear to be going wrong for them, how they haven't managed to capitalise on their 80-seat majority. Plus, we're also going to be looking at the Labour Party and asking, why do they have such a problem working out what a woman is? I mean,
it does seem to be a bit of a running theme with them, it has to be said.
We've had David Lammy saying that a man can have a cervix. We've had...
Even that he can grow a cervix.
He can grow a cervix. They can make something up, I think he said. I mean, what is this? You've had Bridget Phillipson, who couldn't answer simple questions with regard to biology and struggling to work out which lavatory somebody would go in, dependent on their biological sex. I mean, it is absolutely astonishing that we find ourselves here, but we will be going through that as well. We've got a fantastic guest coming up at 5. She's a social media influencer, but she's basically talking about what it's like to be in the world of social media and how can you actually make money. A lot of people are curious about that.
Lots of people, indeed. Thank you very much. Now, that sounds a cracking show with a very feisty debate. Remember, let me know all your thoughts on all the stories we've been discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation, or message me on our socials. There's loads more more coming up on today's show. Now let's go to America. Biden's allies scrambled to contain the fallout from his faltering performance at the first 2024 US presidential debate this week after he struggled to stem a barrage of attacks from Donald Trump. But how will this affect the race for the White House? All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, this weekend offers some sunshine for most of us, but there will be a little bit of rain at times. Main area rain, all courtesy of this fairly weak area of low pressure. It's going to push some cloud and some outbreaks of rain across parts of northern England and Wales this afternoon. That may well spread into the Midlands at times, but either side, plenty of sunshine around. Exception to far north of Scotland here, still quite blustery with some showers coming and going, but in the sunshine across the southeast especially, feeling fairly warm, highs reaching around 24 or 25 degrees. Heading into this evening, and very little changes really across parts of Scotland. We continue this north-south split, so across more northern parts of the country here we continue with some blustery showers, but for many eastern and southern parts of Scotland a fine end to the day. Very similar story for Northern Ireland, and may well start to cheer up a little bit for Northumberland and Cumbria, but elsewhere across northern England, the far north of Wales, a rather grey end to the day, but to the south of it plenty of sunshine to end Saturday, but just the risk of maybe the odd shower just moving into parts of Kent. For the rest of the evening and night, this area of cloud and rain will continue to slowly work its way southeastwards, weakening as it does so. Either side, some clear skies, but still some blustery showers across the far north of Scotland. And under the clear skies, a fairly fresh night, temperatures falling down to about 10 or 11 degrees, but under the cloud, not much lower than around 15 or 16 degrees. So a bit of a grey start for some southern areas on Sunday, risk of a few spots of rain, but for a lot of us, Sunday offers plenty of dry weather, a mixture of some sunshine and also some cloud. But with a northwesterly flow, feeling a little bit cooler, temperatures at their highest in the south reaching around 21 or 22 degrees.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party. Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
Welcome back to GB News, Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. And now, if you think our politics are mad, and getting mad, there's only a week to go. Joe Biden and Donald Trump traded blows this week in the first debate of the 2024 presidential election campaign. The Democrats have now discussed replacing Biden as a nominee as he floundered against his competition in what was described as a disastrous performance.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
Me neither. The pair traded blows over the January 6th Capitol Hill riots.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who was convicted, deserves to be convicted.
Meanwhile, Biden took Trump to task over his hush money trial, taking a dig at his character.
What are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Well, yes, that's as Trump insinuated Biden supported Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of the Ukraine.
He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country.
Wow. OK, and you thought our politics were mad. Joining me now is US political analyst Eric Ham. Eric, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Eric, that debate, it has to be said, I watched like I used to watch Doctor Who as a kid from behind the sofa. How are you Americans feeling about what choice you have coming up for president?
I'm not familiar with Doctor Who, but what I can tell you is that the debate was an unmitigated disaster. I think the real loser in that debate were the American people. And what's so ironic and interesting about that debate, it was President Biden actually offended 40 years of debate precedents by going around the Commission on Presidential Debates. And the reason for that is because we were told that they wanted to see more substance and less theatrics. And clearly what we got in this debate was two geriatric old men, one who seemed to be on the verge of being senile, and the other one who seemed to be more psychopathic. And I think right now what we're seeing in the United States is perhaps the double haters are actually growing, meaning people who don't want either of these candidates to be their commander-in-chief.
We've got similar over here, to be fair. But the New York Times, a very influential newspaper, it came up with the headline, "To serve this country, Biden should leave the race." I mean, is that the general feeling amongst Democrats? I mean, would somebody else really make a difference now?
There is a lot of hand-wringing in the Democratic Party right now. In fact, a lot of high-ranking officials within the party believe that it is time for Joe Biden to have a heart-to-heart conversation with his team, with his family, about perhaps stepping aside. But it appears as though that is not happening. Joe Biden said that he is in this race, he's staying in this race, and I do believe he will be the nominee. So now the party needs to decide, are they going to back him vociferously, much like we see Republicans with Donald Trump, or are they going to continue to hold their hands and watch and see what happens?
And Eric, is it in Donald Trump's interest that Biden does actually indeed remain in that position? Because surely, I mean, you know, it makes Trump's position stronger.
Well, I'm not sure about that. In fact, it's very inexplicable in terms of how this process is playing out. Joe Biden had a very, very bad night. I mean, he couldn't put two words together. He looked hollow. He looked like he wasn't even there. And then we see this North Carolina rally that took place just the next day, where he was spirited, energetic, his voice was strong. And so I'm not sure why we continue to see this feeble, weak man that the president continues to portray. But if that is who Joe Biden is, he needs to be honest and transparent with the American people about that.
And, I mean, it is legally possible to remove Joe Biden, isn't it? But are there candidates ready, willing and able to take over?
Well, to be clear, it's legally possible to remove him as president under the 25th Amendment. In terms of actually removing him as the nominee for president, Joe Biden he's already received the requisite amount of delegates to be the nominee. It just requires going through the process of actually going through the nomination at the convention. That is unlikely to change. And I think right now the party needs to figure out what its plans are. And as I said, Joe Biden is not stepping down. So I think the discussion of, is he leaving? What do you do to remove him? I think that's a moot point because it's not happening. These are the two candidates, and they will be on the ballot, and voters will have to make a decision in November.
And Eric, while we're watching, you know, sort of like, you know, we're going through a similar thing in this country, what message do you think that debate and the choice of leaders you have is sending out to your enemies, Russia, China, Iran, it's making America seem weak, which must be very upsetting for the American public.
You know, debates have always been about optics, and clearly Joe Biden got it wrong. And I think that's something that has dogged him since he came into office. He has been a president who has had a total disdain with the stagecraft and optics of the presidency. And we continue to see that play out. And I think that's so frustrating, because if you're talking about America's enemies, what we have seen from President Biden is someone who has been strong and operated more as a bulwark against fascism and autocracy, in the way he has moved NATO and the West, particularly against Russia, as well as the way he continues to stand up and continues to send weapons and other equipment to Taiwan and its continuing standoff with China. So in terms of the stagecraft and optics, he continues to frustrate and upset. But in terms of the actual policy, I think what we're seeing is the substance is there.
Eric, thank you very much. And all I can say is good luck. Eric Ham, American correspondent, bringing us up to date on the presidential tug-of-war going on in America. OK, right, I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News Saturday. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there. Lots more coming up on today's show. It is Glastonbury, and we'll be going there live to hear about the lineups and who is performing on the sprawling festival. 200,000 people stages. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far, because we're going to Glastonbury.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Almost half of those seeking to have an affair are happier with their job than with their primary relationship. But what exactly does a cheater do for a living?
Well, medical assistants and nurses, surprisingly, top the lists of professions for female cheaters. And it's jobs in IT or tech for male cheaters, which I think is less of a surprise.
No.
This is all according to a survey by the dating site Ashley Madison.
OK, so why do people cheat? To answer this, we're joined now by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy.
Morning, Lucy.
So, is it OK of me to say naughty nurses in this day and age? Am I going to get cancelled for that?
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Been cancelled.
See ya.
There's the door.
But yes, you're talking about the caring professions, and I think it's very appropriate.
I'm surprised by that.
Women, well, because they're very nurturing, very loving, very giving, whereas the males who are in tech and IT, very strategic.
Is there a link between high-pressure jobs, maybe nurses infamously, you know, they're working long hours, underpaid, stressed out? Is there a link between jobs of that nature and cheating, maybe as a relief?
Absolutely. Is it just about sex, or is it about emotional connection? Is it about emotional validation? And increasingly, people are discovering that their primary relationship is just not a place where they feel safe.
This survey found that personality didn't actually come into it that much. It was about half and half if you're an introvert or an extrovert that you'd be likely to have an affair.
I think that's right. And I think that just speaks to the fact that all people want to have a good emotional connection. So it doesn't matter whether you're really social or whether you're someone who has to recharge your batteries in private time, that actually we only ever want three things in life. We want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, but we also want to feel heard. And in increasingly a number of marriages and long-term relationships, we get into grooves, we get into ruts, and we stop hearing our partner. We stop listening to them, and they stop listening to us.
The People's Channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited,
We'll be here with you.
following all the twists and turns,
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
with our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Now, the UK's biggest music festival, Glastonbury, is in full swing. The crowds have already been treated to Dua Lipa and PJ Harvey. And tonight, Coldplay will take to the main stage for what will certainly be quite the spectacle. Joining me now is showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci, who is also looking pretty spectacular. It has to be said. Always is, though. Steph, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're having a wonderful time. What's happening?
I really am. Well, it's now day 4 out of day 5 out of the Glastonbury Festival, Dawn, and it was only yesterday the music came on. So the 2 days prior to that, it was like the calm before the storm here at Worthy Farm. Up to 200,000 people are now here. And yesterday they were treated to a lovely pyramid performance from Dua Lipa, who rocked the stage for 2 hours. And it must say, I'm not the biggest fan of hers, but she definitely has a catalogue of music which really got the fans going last night. But tonight, it's all about Coldplay. They're not new to Glastonbury at all. This is the 5th time they'll be performing. So the festival did get a bit of criticism, you know, why are we having Coldplay again? But I guess it's a safe pair of hands for them. And, you know, they've got so many songs that I can imagine the crowd will be singing along to tonight.
So, I mean, I did manage to, getting down with the kids. I managed to capture a bit of it yesterday, and it was the Sugar Babes who I understand went down very well as well.
Yeah, I was actually really looking forward to their performance. And I think that's the good thing about Glastonbury. You may see some people over and over again on the lineup, but there's people like Sugar Babes who haven't performed in over a decade, but they've still got that fan base who remembers them clearly. Like, I haven't seen Coldplay perform, so I'm actually really looking forward to seeing them perform tonight. But then also we've got other people like Shania Twain, she'll be performing on the legendary slot tomorrow. And right now, as we speak, Dawn, we've got Cyndi Lauper. She's performing on the Pyramid stage.
Wow. And I've never been, Steph, and I'm not sure I envy you or not, to be honest with you. What is it really like down there? Is it as sort of like is going to the loo and having a shower as bad as we all imagine it to be?
Dawn, it is every woman for themselves here. I make sure I'm up at 5 a.m. in the morning, so I beat the crowd to the showers and everything, because if not, once it hits about 9 o'clock, you're literally in the queue for about an hour just to use the shower or use the toilet. But, you know, luckily I'm kind of in the hospitality area, which is quite different from the main areas, which you can imagine if it wasn't a really sunny day would be a complete mud fest. But that's the spirit of Glastonbury. I think people don't mind going all their luxuries just to be here at Worthy Farm, because there's just so much to do over the space of 5 days.
And Stephanie, just very, very quickly, there have been some criticism that it's been very political this year. I mean, in my mind, it's always been political. But, I mean, have you seen much evidence of people, you know, the Palestinian flags and people sort of like, you know, giving political messages from the stage? What evidence is there for that?
Well, yesterday, Dawn, last night, while Dua was on, there was also a Bristol punk band called Idols, and they're very much a political movement, but they use their music to express it. So yesterday, they had about 7 pro-Palestine flags up. Banksy actually revealed some of his artwork on stage yesterday, so that was quite a heated one, and they had a song called F the King, which didn't go down too well, and I think it was a bit tasteful, to be honest.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Over the coming days, the weather is going to be a little bit mixed. Some of us will see some rain, but most of us should see some sunshine from time to time. So as we end Saturday, we've still got this weak area of low pressure to the west of the UK that will continue to bring in some cloud and rain across parts of northern England and Wales. That will slowly work its way southeastwards as we go through the course of the night. Either side, plenty of clear skies, but still the risk of some blustery showers across the far north of Scotland. Under the clear skies, temperatures falling down to about 10 or 11 degrees for most of us, but under the cloud cover, not much lower than around 15 or 16 degrees. So a bit of a grey start across many southern parts of the UK. This cloud will be thick enough at times to produce the odd spot of rain, but as the morning goes on, it will gradually begin to break up and turn drier. But the best of the sunshine first thing will be across parts of Wales into the Midlands, northern England, where further north across Northern Ireland and Scotland we'll see a mixture of some sunshine and also a few showers. Most frequent showers will be probably across Shetland and Orkney, where still there'll be a fairly keen wind. As we go through the course of Sunday, most of us actually should see some plenty of dry weather, a mixture of cloud and some sunshine. The cloud tended to bubble up during the middle of the day before easing away again as we head into the latter part of the afternoon. Best of the sunshine probably down towards the southwest, but with this northwesterly flow, it will feel a little bit cooler than it has been on Saturday. Highest temperatures in the south reaching around 21 or 22 degrees. Very little changes as we end the weekend, a fairly fine end to Sunday, but you can see this next area of rain just beginning to move in across the west, and that will give a fairly wet start for some to the new working week, but generally plenty of dry weather to be had, especially in the south.
That warm feeling inside.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tormini.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Acquia. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it is yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next hour, broadcaster and journalist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. In a few moments' time, I'll be mucking the week with comedian and presenter of the Saturday 5, Albie Amankona. And for this week, in my political spotlight, pollster and political research director at Savanta, Chris Hopkins. With less than a week till the general election, can we trust any political party in light of Gamblegate? Then my Great British Debate, I'm asking, are our politicians the wrong class of people? Labour's David Lammy seems to think so. He claims the Tories are not the right class of people to be running Britain because of their public school smallness. But are they all just hypocrites on that matter? And then international presenter, model and entrepreneur Amel Rashidi discussing how she became successful and bridging the gap between UK and the USA with her talents. Members of the Labour Party also struggling to work out what a woman is.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix, David?
I don't know if it's transphobic, but it's not accurate, Nick. I mean, obviously, it's probably the case that only that trans women don't have ovaries, but a cervix, I understand, is something that you can have following various procedures.
Really? I'd love to know what those procedures are. But before we get started, let's get your latest news.